Key allies among those countries least approving of U.S. leadership. Countries in Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa have the most negative opinion of U.S. leadership. Someone who spent the last year chronicling the views of America around the world is Amar Bakshi, a blogger and journalist who launched a video blog hosted by the Washington Post titled How the World Sees America. He traveled to 12 different nations to try to put a face to the growing voices of anti-American sentiment globally. He began his trip in the UK, where Gallup finds that only 20% approve of U.S. leadership.
The thing is, there are different types of anti-Americanisms, and there's a great book by Robert Cohen out by that title, and he classes, sort of liberal anti-Americanism as complaints against U.S. hypocrisy. We agree with your ideals, but you don't exercise them. There's social anti-Americanism, which basically says you guys don't take care of your poor. There's radical anti-Americanism, which is sort of you are completely opposed to our values, Islam versus the West. And then there's sovereign national anti-Americanism, which is our nation state needs to be secure. The only way to do that is to prevent you from entering. So in England, you get this liberal strain. People think that U.S. leadership is just thoroughly hypocritical. And while it claims to be doing one thing, it's really in it for another set of interests. And I think for some of them, if the U.S. admitted alternate interests rather than try to couch them in flowery language, it would actually improve the way people see the United States.
We also sort of did regional breakdowns. The median in Europe was only 22%, just above the Middle East and North Africa, which is at 17%. So in actuality, Europe was second to the Middle East and North Africa in having low approval ratings of U.S. leadership. It's
important to keep in mind that there'll be different strands of opposition. I mean, what worries people in the Middle East is not that they disagree with our foreign policies. That is worrisome, but even more worrisome is that they disagree wholesale with the values and the ideas of the United States. Whatever that means, not that they disagree with democracy, but that they view the United States as a force that's out to get them.
Now, what did you find in Turkey? Because Turkey's sort of in this precarious position, because Turkey's sort of seen as the bridge between the West and Islam, or the West and the Middle East. But according to our numbers, only 16% of Turks actually approve of the leadership of the U.S.
I think Turkey is this place that will turn any American's view of a homogenous Muslim world on its head. Because you have secular Turkish elite who've been in power for decades, who say the U.S. is trying to Islamize our country as part of their greater Middle East project. And they cite our support for the ruling AKP party. On the other hand, you have religious Turks who are saying that the American model of church and state is more liberated than the French model, which really pushes religion out of the public sphere. So they're reaching towards the American model. So there's a lot of complexity. But at the end of the day, I think one of the overriding issues for Turks is the Kurdish Workers' Party and the PKK that's attacking from northern Iraq. And while I was there, they felt that the U.S. was tying their hands from retaliating against what they called their terrorists.
And again, our clear message is that this is a resolution that we don't think is the right response. It's the wrong resolution at the wrong time.
And what I would hear again and again from soldiers, from imams all across, was that the U.S. only cared about its own terrorists, not theirs.
In returning from your trip, what was the overall global trend that you saw?
I think that poll numbers do a good job at getting at the trends. But I think what gets missed is that there are narratives in every single country that are very distinct, that incorporate global events into them, into the narratives. So in Turkey, you have the Iraq War, and it gets compacted into this very long narrative about U.S. interventions in the region over 50 years. And these narratives are very personal, they're very emotional, and I think that addressing these narratives is an important part of improving America's image in the world, not just looking from one policy to the next.